Within just a couple of weeks, the Omicron variant of COVID went from being a scary new name that we knew nothing about, to being the variant responsible for the bulk of new infections in London. This December has been the second scariest period of COVID so far, behind only the original spread of the disease, where it was all new and unknown. At least with the Delta variant, it came just as the vaccines were rolling out, so the result was things just carried on roughly as before, with the Delta's increased virulence being almost perfectly cancelled out by the vaccine's protection. But Omicron, for whatever reason, spreads far more easily and quickly. Cases have gone from a rather steady 40,000 or so a day to over 90,000 in recent days, which are the highest documented numbers so far in this pandemic. And while England tests hundreds of thousands of people a day, people are beginning to question if even that is enough. There are still mixed messages over just how dangerous the Omicron variant is, but spiking case numbers is never a good sign, especially when it typically leads to higher hospitalisation and death rates in the weeks that follow. So it's best to play it safe and to limit its spread as much as possible. But then, on top of all of this, is Christmas. Now just a week away, it puts the government in a difficult position. Do they dare cancel Christmas again, which would be met with anger and disobedience? Or do they sit back and do nothing, and hope that people take responsibility by cancelling social engagements and by practising stricter mask and hand-washing procedures by themselves? We all know that if we test positive for COVID now, it would mean isolating away from everyone until after Christmas. And the only ray of hope that we have is the vaccination rollout, which was opened up to everybody about a week ago and is now jabbing close to 1 million people a day, with the hope being that a third vaccine dose will be enough to protect against the Omicron variant. From what I hear, 2 doses offers little protection, but 3 is, for some reason, currently up to 75% effective in preventing symptomatic infections. I'm still not sure why 3 is now the magical number, but we all need to cling to something, and that's the current hope to get us through this wave. It's amazing how much change just a couple of weeks can make. There I was, back in November, thinking that I should stop doing monthly videos about this because it's been pretty much the same thing for several months now, but suddenly I feel the urge to make 2 videos in 1 month. Last month, with Delta everywhere, we knew that there was a risk, but it felt like the booster rollout would protect the elderly enough for the rest of us to be able to carry on with our Christmas plans as normal. My girlfriend wanted to go abroad, but I erred on the side of caution and suggested we stayed in England instead, and so we booked a trip to London. With what we know now, that rather cautious plan suddenly sounds utterly insane. With the government restricting vaccine bookings to the over 40s until rather recently, we were only able to book our own booster vaccines about 4 days before we left for holiday. But at that point, I was only able to get appointments either just before Christmas Day or in the new year, neither of which would have helped with our London trip. 3 days after that, and the day we left for London, the booster vaccine was opened up as a free-for-all, as the country went into emergency mode by letting anybody just turn up at a vaccination centre as they pleased. I, however, was unable to make this, because with my holiday soon to start, I was totally busy getting all of my work done before I left. And, given how I reacted to the second vaccine, I fear I'd travel up to London and spend my first day there incapacitated by nasty flu symptoms and by a dreadful headache. We travelled up on the train, in a relatively full carriage of people mostly wearing masks. There was the occasional cough, and a few people who still hadn't figured out how to wear a mask properly, but for the most part it felt about as safe as it could have done, in a carriage full of people in a pandemic. But it was surreal to roll up to Waterloo Station and to see so many people everywhere with masks on and with warnings about COVID everywhere. I apologise for being somebody who lives in a quieter part of the country, so at least this London visit gives you a perspective of somewhere a lot busier, and at the time it finds itself in the heart of a pandemic. I was told this was quiet for London. It seemed like a lot of people were not risking it in the streets or shops. But compared to what I'm used to, it still seemed pretty busy to me as we explored the streets and attractions of the capital in the lead up to Christmas. We went to Harrods, which seemed busy but not what I'd call crowded. We were able to get up to the Sky Garden in the walkie-talkie building, which seemed a lot bigger than it was in Watch Dogs Legion. Yes, we even went to London Dungeons instead of something else we had booked which was cancelled due to COVID. And yes, all of the actors wore masks. And we watched The Birds in Hyde Park. We had booked to see a theatre production, but that had been cancelled due to COVID as well, so we saw a pantomime instead. This is a Christmas tradition for my girlfriend, but I was happy for once to actually recognise one of the actors. I wouldn't personally describe myself as being much of a pantomime kind of person, but maybe I am, because if you've watched my Odd Grub videos, pantomimes are pretty much like the innuendo bits of those, but for 2 whole hours, and with some singing and dancing, and with a big budget contraption about halfway through, and with one surprise flashbang when you least expect it. Normally they follow a traditional story like Peter Pan or Cinderella, but this year they explained at the beginning that they didn't want for there to be a villain, and that due to COVID they just wanted for this year's production to be a cheery celebration of pantomime cliches. But it still came with more jokes about COVID than you could imagine. One of the actors got booed and said they hadn't had a reaction like that since they had attended Boris Johnson's Christmas party. They sung the 12 Days of Christmas, but with COVID-related things like 5 toilet rolls instead. There was a ventriloquist act, where at one point he cleared his throat and the dummy asked if that was a new cough he had. I won't even start on the jabbing innuendos, of which there were plenty. And you could get a vaccine for £3, they said, or 2 for a Pfizer. I'd say that either that theatre production or the London dungeons was the biggest risk that we took while up in London. Lots of people in a confined space. Everybody wore a mask in the dungeons, but many people flat out abused the rules in the theatre and spent the whole time without one on. I was reading up about stuff online, and it's laughable how stupid the stuff that's said there is when you're literally there in person, seeing it for how it actually is. I read that London was in lockdown. Not from what I could see. Quieter than normal, but it's still a massive city with millions of inhabitants. The underground is up and running, and there are queues on the escalators leading to and from them. But we didn't have to queue to get our picture with the Queen at Madame Tussauds, which is apparently unheard of. I saw good mask usage, for the most part, but there were always a few individuals without one on, and a few families who all happened to be exempt for whatever reason. I think people are on edge now. We've endured this for 2 years, but a new variant and booming case numbers is enough to make us all feel a little bit uneasy. Or at least most of us. We searched for lateral flow tests everywhere. We got ourselves an NHS code for them, meaning we could just go into any pharmacy we could find and to pick up a pack. But nowhere had them in stock. Just signs on the doors stating very clearly that they didn't have any. I don't think there's a single lateral flow pack in London right now, so I don't know how they're supposed to keep track of new cases. Luckily, the person who picked us up from the station provided us with tests to do there and then. And they were negative. But the next few days will be fraught with worry over whether we truly got away with it. And every tingle in the throat, every slight headache, and every cough will make us worry about it. Somebody we were meant to visit on Christmas Day tested positive a few days after a small Christmas party they had, so that's our Christmas plan subverted. Somebody my parents knew died from it just the other week, and that person was younger than either of them. Most Christmas parties are being cancelled now, and it's common for outbreaks in schools and workplaces. All this brings the pandemic closer to home than ever before, and I know more people with it now than I did in previous waves. And towards the end of our London trip, case numbers in the region rapidly shot up. A week previously it had been under 10,000, but now surpassed 26,000 in the London region alone, and leaving the Waterloo station, it felt like we were fleeing a sinking ship. Our train carriage was barely half full, but there were still 3 or 4 people in there with bad coughs. Really bad coughs. But what do you do? What should they do? One by one, they left at various stations and cities on the way into the southwest of England, until it was just us, heading off into the depths of Devon, having been in London just a few hours prior. Nowhere's really that far away from a hotspot.